you have borderline personality disorder, you most likely struggle with identifying what you want, when you want, in an assertive, not aggressive or passive-aggressive manner. Sometimes you want to help others, right? Like I find that borderlines are generally very empathetic and willing to help and want to help in any way they can. And of course, helping can sometimes cross into a line of unsolicited advice. That's true, but it's never ill intention. And if you have trouble speaking up for yourself, and if you have trouble fitting into social situations, or if you have trouble asking for what you need, and then you put yourself out there and you feel confident, you feel good about it, and someone shuts you down, or someone ignores you, or someone literally cuts you off with a kind of a brutal put down or sentence, something, it can really get you feeling emotionally twisted. You know, you came in feeling a little bit anxious and maybe a little bit unsure of yourself with some low self-esteem to speak up, and then you speak up and then someone shits all over it. And so do you either feel good about, you know, your ability that you spoke up? Like, is that something that you continue to be feeling proud about? Or instead, do you feel shut down, angry, less likely to share, and have this reinforcement of, well, why did I even speak anyway? That's what we're going to talk about today on BPD Woman. I'm going to talk about when people ignore you or shut you down or cut you off in the middle of a sentence altogether, and how that makes us feel and what you can do so that you don't let it affect your self-worth. Let's get going. My name's Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn how to more effectively live and manage your borderline personality disorder. My goal is to help you realize your goals, sharing my wisdom, therapeutic experience, things I've learned along the way, and living with the disorder for the last 30 years, 20 of which I have been diagnosed with. I can share and impart with you tricks that I have learned along the way that therapists or psychologists just can't be tuned in with. And while I highly recommend a psychologist, specifically one specializing in borderline or personality disorders that's trained in DBT, I can answer one important question that they cannot, which is, what is it like to live with borderline personality disorder? And in that nuance, I can help you along the way. In my 20 years of diagnosis, I've attended over half a dozen DBT classes. I have every major book on the subject of BPD. I've completed the workbooks. I've completed multiple DBT books. I read research. I watch other specialty YouTube channels. I have my own YouTube channel. You get it. I'm pretty committed. If you are interested in positive solution-based approaches to recovery, then you are in the right place. And if you have BPD, CPTSD, or just consider yourself a highly emotional or sensitive person that has difficulty regulating emotions and specifically has trouble communicating interpersonally with others, then you are also in the right place. And I invite you to subscribe. So please hit that button and that bell below so you never miss a beat. I produce anywhere from 1, sometimes up to 5 videos per week. And if you're a family member or spouse or friend or coworker, just someone that's interested in positive solution-based approaches to recovery, there's a playlist just for you entitled Vids for the Family, so check it out. Let's get going. I'm going to share an experience that I had with you yesterday. Actually, 2 experiences that kind of went back to back, and this is in a work setting. And as most of you know, or if you don't know, I own my own pet sitting and dog walking business. And I really pride myself on connecting with other pet professionals and getting their advice. I work with a trainer, kind of unofficially. He trained my dog, and I go to him for advice. And I read articles, and I'd like to consider myself kind of an up-and-coming expert, if you will, in the pet services arena. And I've had my own business now for going on 3 years in September. So I've been doing this a while. I've been a lifelong pet owner. And what I'm trying to communicate to you is that I bring with me a sense of expertise in the area of certain dog behaviorisms, walking tips, products that I found useful. I'm around, anywhere from 6 to 10 different dogs every single week, and including other pets and experts. So, I get a lot of information. And so as someone that likes to help and share, and when I see someone that's maybe having a problem or an issue, and they've identified that issue, I don't go around saying, this is a problem, that's a problem, this is a problem. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. That would fall more into that really unsolicited advice category. I do, when I see someone that's struggling with something, I will see something and I will offer some. Now, just a mention here about unsolicited advice. What is it? Well, when I was learning validation, interpersonal validation from DBT, one of the very first exercises that the psychologist had us do was just listen and not give advice when someone communicated a problem or a situation to us. We weren't supposed to say, oh, well, that's happened to me and I would do this, or, well, you shouldn't let your boss do that, like you should say this, right? It was more a, validation is not agreeing, not necessarily, but it's showing compassion and understanding that you're on the same page with the other person, that you hear them. It doesn't mean you agree. You can absolutely validate someone and disagree. Someone can say, oh, I'm so fat and ugly, and you can say, to validate them, sounds like you're really feeling down on yourself. What's that all about? That's a way to validate, show that you're there for them, be compassionate, without saying, yeah, you are fat, right? Which A, isn't going to help, and B, might not be true. So I have 2 clients, and one of the clients referred me to another. And the first client, we're gonna call her Jane Doe. The first client, Jane Doe, has had a rescue dog for 1 year. And prior to this, the dog, we're not sure what happened, but it came from a pretty traumatic background. Very skittish, it runs, it bolts, it gets off its leash, it has severe anxiety, it throws up when it's in the car. There's just a lot of issues going on emotionally with this dog. And so if you're going to get a dog like that, and you want to give your dog the best life, behaviorism training, regular dog obedience training, that's really essential. Socialization with other dogs, that's really essential into making sure you give your dog the best effort, and so that you avoid certain situations like the dog getting spooked and running away, or the dog getting spooked and biting someone. And so when I met this client, she's always been on the reactive side of things and not the proactive side. What do I mean? Well, the dog runs away, she chases the dog, right? Like, she doesn't think, oh, I should get like a really secure harness for this dog. The dog doesn't listen, the dog doesn't obey commands. So instead of training, she'll carry the dog, right? Which in itself, like, is kind of jarring and traumatic for an animal if that's how you're transporting them in and out of the house. Instead of training, she's carrying them in and out. So I see a lot of these reactive behaviors from this client. And so it makes me a little nervous, right? Because when a client has not trained a dog, right, to recognize their name, I'm talking basic commands: come, sit, stay, down, right? And these things seem innocuous enough, but if your dog gets off a leash or if your dog runs away, your first line of defense is to call their name. Hey, Baxter, stop, come. And then they come back, right? And you right there can nip running away or getting hit by a car or any other catastrophic event from getting in the way of your dog being lost or stolen or whatever. So this client doesn't do this. I think she's attended 2 or 3 training sessions in the course of a year, but that doesn't do enough. You training or parenting, it never ends. If you have a child, I'm sure you would agree, the parenting never ends. It's, paying for your car never ends. It's always an upkeep, right? You stop paying the dealership, you start paying the mechanic. So it's consistent. And this client, she works crazy hours. I mean, she probably works upwards of 60 hours a week. So she works a lot of hours. So she's just, in my professional opinion, she's not giving this dog what this dog needs, and thus the dog is living a very anxious life and is prone to run away, and it doesn't listen. And as a pet provider, this has been this is like my fear, that I would lose someone's dog, and not because of my own negligence. I drop the leash, I'm not paying attention, I leave the front door open, nothing like that. But that the dog wouldn't listen to me if I called its name. And so this happened yesterday. I was getting the dog out of the car like I normally do. We were parked inside the client's garage. I had the dog's leash in my hand. And I noticed when I picked the dog up from daycare, it wasn't wearing its regular 3-point fixed harness. It was just wearing a martingale collar. Now they're called no slip, but you can slip out of them if you wiggle enough. And I was taking the dog out of the car just as usual, and the dog jittered about, shook about, was out of the leash. And for the next hour and 45 minutes, I had to spend in a very busy intersection in a very busy neighborhood of where this client lives, looking for the dog. Now, it was very quick. I called the police. I said, this is what's happening. If someone calls in about this dog, a kind citizen called in. We had a spotting. Then I was chasing the dog. I found the dog. Some other people, helped me with the dog. It was a group effort. So when it first happened, I'm sure many of you are thinking, perhaps, oh my gosh, she must have been terrified, or oh my gosh, she must have been feeling really bad. And the answer is no, I was angry. And I was angry because this client has made my life more difficult. Now, maybe that's going to sound a little controversial to some viewers. But the thing is, this all could have been avoided had the owner been using the fixed point harness. I don't know why she decided to just use this collar today. Had she attached tags or a GPS collar to the dog. They have these GPS collars, you can put them on your dog, and if the dog gets away, or if the dog's like a country dog, there's an app and you can like see where your dog is, like on this app. It's incredible. She could have had that. There's no training going on. She hasn't done anything about the dog's anxiety. The dog's not on medicine. So my first thing was, fuck, because I was so pissed off because this was inevitably going to happen. And after about 30 minutes of searching, getting proactive and getting, I mean, this is a big area where we live. Like, we live in a city of like over 100,000. So it wasn't like a small little town. Like, there were lots of nooks and crannies. So it's very fortunate that I put in this series of events that got the dog. But this wasn't negligence of mine, right? I did what I do all the time with this dog. I don't know what was different about today, but I'm using the collar and the leash that the owner provided, right? Like, I'm taking the dog out as instructed. I'm doing everything. So there's nothing that I can do. And thankfully I had treats with me. I had my air horn, so I was trying to get the dog's attention. I was throwing treats. But this technically, while obviously the dog was lost in my charge for a little while, this really wasn't by definition my fault, because I wasn't negligent with this dog, right? She's decided not to train the dog. She's decided not to put the dog on medicine. She's decided not to get a fixed harness. So 10 years ago, I would probably just be absolutely racked with guilt. This is all my fault. I'd be in tears. I'd probably be so emotionally dysregulated that I wouldn't even be able to think properly to get, put in a series of events so that I could get the dog back, right? Okay, this time was different because I was clear, okay? I was clear conscienced. I was, well, not clear conscious. I was clear in my cognitive thinking, and I was able to like act, right? Like in an emergency, like there's no time to be emotional in emergencies. You gotta act. It was almost kind of some instinct, I would say, kind of kicked in this situation. But 10 years ago, I would have been like hemming and hawing, like, this is all my fault, like, I'm so sorry, like, I'm a piece of shit. I'd take all the responsibility and absolve the owner, right? That was back then when I thought my opinion mattered little. That was back then 10 years ago when I thought everything was my fault. Everything, if people don't like me, it's my fault. If something happens, it's because I did something wrong or incorrect. That's no longer the case. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, this was inevitable to happen because you've decided not to take these measures. And I come to find out yesterday in conversations with this owner that, she's lost the dog several times. The dog's jumped out of her harness. The dog's jumped out of her, her leash before. She's like, oh, well, the dog just generally runs around the neighborhood. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that, right? So when someone doesn't listen to you, that could be interpreted in your borderline thinking, your dysregulated thinking, your cognitively distorted thinking that this is my fault, I'm a jerk, I'm a bad person. My opinion isn't worth anything. But that's not the case. The first step into not taking responsibility for something that truly isn't your fault is self-worth. What am I? Who am I? Did I do everything in my best abilities? And the answer in this was yes. So truly, this was not my fault. And in fact, this has happened many times before with this owner. So when someone doesn't listen to you or take your expert advice, or they decide to act unaccordingly, that is theirs to fix. This situation that happened yesterday was a culmination of the owner's, frankly, irresponsibility in properly caring for this very anxious, flight-prone dog. Period. So did I feel upset? I felt worried about what would happen to the dog. I felt worried about how this might play out with my reputation. But not for 1 minute did I think this is my fault. This is my fault. Because 95% of this was not my fault, right? And now I'm in a position where I'm going to reconsider, like, should I even take on this client anymore? Because first of all, that was like a 2-hour ordeal that really sapped me for the rest of the day. It threw off the rest of my work schedule. She only paid for 1 hour. I was there for 2 hours. Obviously, I'm not going to charge her. I have a huge bruise. I don't even know where this bruise came from. I have this huge bruise. I'm going to show you. This huge bruise on my arm. I have no idea where this came from yesterday, right? All in this, like, trying to get this dog back. So now I'm going to think, like, is this worth it to me? Like, right? So that's taking a responsible action that's proactive on my part. So that's the first thing I want to say about this situation. Let's go on to the second thing. When people, instead of listening to you, don't listen to you, they cut you off. And the takeaway here on both of these stories is that you cannot let a reflection of someone not listening to you or cutting you off, take that as a personal ding to your self-worth or self-esteem. Is it going to hurt? Yes. Do I not like it when people don't listen to me or cut me off? Absolutely. Does that make me any less confident in my ability to feel good about the expertise and the care I give? No, not in that situation. Let's go on to the next. So the second situation was that in this complex, I have another reoccurring client that lives there. And yesterday she saw kind of all this go down. She was outside with her dog. And again, this is, and after all this happened, like, I knocked on her door and again, this is a client, this is a dog I see every day. And I said, I just wanted to say thank you for your help earlier. And I really appreciate it. And she was like, oh yeah. She's like, that dog gets out all the time. So now we're going to call this Janet Doe. So we had Jane Doe, and now we're going to call this Janet Doe. So Janet and I are talking, and she's had a lot of issues with her dog. Now, honestly, this dog is more well-trained than any dog I've ever met. This dog is high energy, but that's just the breed of the dog. And there's some reactivity issues, but honestly, it's nothing that's out of the ordinary. But for some reason, this client has got it in her head that like the dog must not bark, the dog must not be reactive, the dog must not have the hackles go up. And she's put a lot of training and energy. And like she's, you know, been contemplating for a while, oh, maybe I should get rid of the dog, maybe this, maybe that. And I don't understand it. To me, there's nothing wrong with the dog. Like I've seen, you know, the dog is not like attacking people. It's nipped a few times during the course of play, but that's honestly, from the owner's point of view, Janet Doe's point of view, that was because of something that a previous person who cared for the animal did. And it can be broken, but you have to break it. And so, you know, this client has communicated several things to me before, you know, that she's a bit socially anxious and that, you know, she's, sweetie, don't do that. She's a bit socially anxious and that, you know, that she seems, honestly, she seems a bit emotionally dysregulated. Like I can kind of clue into some things. So we're just talking at her front door and she's like, well, the dog's gonna go to a board and train. Now, for those of you who don't know, a board and train is literally what it sounds like. It's too loud, that's too loud. Sorry. You send your dog away to a strange place with strangers that it's never met, and it sits in this facility. A lot of the time it's created for anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks outside of the home. So the dog's not trained in an environment that it's used to. It's not trained by people that it's ever seen before. And a lot of what these board and trains do is fear-based. You will do this. You will comply. Okay, I don't know about you, but like fear-based has never really worked in training me on anything. Okay, except maybe to run from a fire or a car accident. So she offers this information yesterday. You know, she offers this information. And I had my mask on, so, you know, and I was like, have you heard about, she's like, I'm not accepting any opinions right now, thanks. That's what she said. Or she said something like, I'm not looking for any opinions. My decision is final. And I was like, wow. She's like, my boss has recommended this. And I was like, okay, right? I'm at the front door. I've already had an exhausting day. I said, okay, right? Like, I still want to keep the client around. I said, well, I have to get going. So thank you again, you know, and I left. And, you know, I had a lot of adrenaline going. Like, I just come off after running around for this other dog that was lost. And I had just had this, like, really emotional experience. And I'm feeling all sorts of different things, sweetie. And so, pardon me. And so in the course of all of this, I was just like, I didn't have time to process it. I had to go to another client and do what I need to do and compartmentalize. And I'm going to do another video about what compartmentalizing is. So I didn't have a lot of time to like really process this. So I get home, and the more I thought about this, I was like, that was so fucking rude. Who says something like that? Like, I'm not looking for any opinions. Wow. You know, what's the inference there? That I give too many opinions? I mean, first of all, I thought about this. Okay, do I give lots of unsolicited advice? I don't think so. I could definitely take a look at that. But if that is something that I'm doing, there are other ways to address that rather than say something jarring and hurtful, like, I'm not looking for opinions. Because essentially what she's saying is that your opinion doesn't matter and I don't want to hear it. And that did hurt. And, you know, as the night wore on, I you know, kind of thought about it, and I was like, okay, you know what? This is not my baggage. This is her. This is how she interacts with people. And based on things that I've heard her say and how she interacts with other people, I'm not going to take this personally. This has nothing to do with me. I'm probably not the first person that she's ever said something like this to. Does it hurt? Did it sting? Yeah, I thought it was rude. Was she being intentionally rude to me? I don't know. But nonetheless, it had the same effect. So it did hurt. Did I think my opinions were any less valid or important? Fuck no, I think my opinions are super valuable. Her boss, who works like in contracting and defense, he knows more about dog training than someone who works with dogs all the time? Okay, if that's, you know. But, you know, your dog, if it's already having these kinds of issues and you put it in a fear-based facility for 2 to 3 weeks, chances are your dog's going to come back worse. And additionally, those board and trains cost upwards of $1,500 per week. So we're talking a lot of money. It's probably like 1,100 pounds per week, or excuse me, yeah, 1,100 pounds per week. So what does this do? What do I want to do? Well, I was upset enough that I was like, I'm not gonna like go there tomorrow. I'm just gonna tell her I'm not feeling well. Okay, no, that's not the professional thing. I'm going to keep being professional. And professional to me means I show up, I give the same service, I'm still cordial, I still do all of these things. However, if she doesn't value my opinion and she's going to act like that, well, then I'm not going to put myself in another uncomfortable position. So, okay, I will not offer advice anymore. Figure it out. Okay, doesn't think that I'm any less knowledgeable. I'm not going to be nasty to her, but it was jarring. So in both of these situations, the takeaway is that my own self-worth and self-esteem and knowledge of my job led me to deal with both of these situations yesterday in a manner that I knew I was doing the best that I could and I wasn't hurting anyone and the things were not my fault. Had I not had that instilled sense of esteem, these two instances that I've just described, someone not listening to my expert advice and someone cutting me off and not wanting to listen to me at all, probably would have sent me into a dysregulated spin. And so what I can offer to you is to keep practicing day by day. Things that people do or say, I want you to remember, have nothing to do with you. They have nothing to do with you. Don't take it personal. Even when someone says, I'm gonna shoot you in the face, don't take that personally. That's their anger, that's their baggage, that's their thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Please leave your comments below. Share some of experiences. What has it felt like when people have interrupted you or they've ignored you or they've cut you off? My name is Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. We've been talking about what it feels like and how to deal with people who don't listen to you or cut you off. Thanks so much, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and until I see you next time, please be effective. Bye-bye.